Our fans wait. Making our fans wait.
Just a few seconds.
Oh, no. We are live. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be talking about a number of things, of a couple of crises, possibly unemployment crisis, gas crisis, inflation crisis. Maybe we'll even get to the poll that Heartland just commissioned with the Rasmussen. We'll see. We'll see if we have time for that. I don't know. We're going to talk about all of these things in episode 294 of the In the Tank podcast. As always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal, joined by I've got Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. Yeah, it seems like the whole country and the world is in crisis all of a sudden. You know, back when there was another president before this one, the media talked about crises all the time, mostly about stuff that Trump tweeted. But,
Right.
you know, the economy was doing well before COVID. The world was much more at peace. Gasoline prices were down. Inflation was a non-factor. Everything was just moving along very nicely. But we were always in crisis because, you know, the bad orange man was in the White House and using his Twitter account. So
yeah, he tweeted things. You know, that's first and foremost. You know, you work your way down. That's top priority number one. How mean was our president on Twitter? And then, you know, global crises come after that. That's what we've learned so far in the first, several months of this new administration. But Jim, So I've got a lineup of things that I want to talk about, but you sent something earlier today that I thought was pretty interesting, ties into a topic that we talk about a lot, which is energy policy and all of that. This is an article from the Washington Free Beacon. John Kerry, admits slave labor fuels China's green energy supply chain. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I thought it just kind of relates to stuff that we've talked about, especially things recently that we've talked about. But it says during testimony before the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Kerry was pressed on recent comments suggesting that China's ongoing genocide against the ethnic Uyghur minority should not get in the way of a climate deal. Some 80% of the world's solar panels are produced in China, and the United States has determined that at least a portion are made by the Uyghur slave laborers in the country's Xinjiang province. Asked about the issue, Kerry was forced to publicly acknowledge that slave labor fuels the green energy market. You're absolutely correct. It's a problem, John Kerry said. So I want to bring that up in relation to a topic that you had brought up recently, which was that John Kerry said during some other panel that if the U.S. were to go to zero carbon emissions today, like you snap fingers, Thanos style, boom, no carbon emissions, that it wouldn't do anything because, he acknowledged that the U.S. only makes up like 15% of the world's carbon emissions. That's well below the 30+% of China. So between that and the acknowledgement that these solar panels are in part constructed using slave labor in China, John Kerry is starting to sound like one of us. So, that's quite a stretch because he says a whole lot of other things that are crazy, but he's not just ignoring this stuff, he's acknowledging it. I would love to see what his response is to dealing with this, this perceived problem. But, are these statements kind of surprising to you that he's actually saying them? I don't know.
He's been forced to say it. It's something he can't avoid. Not only are 80% of the world's solar panels made in China, and this is one of the, we've talked about this on this podcast a lot, right? We talk a lot about energy policy and how crummy green energy, so-called green energy actually is, that the United States outsources the creation of all these solar panels to China, and then we buy them back. So that's a really great deal. The idea that there's all these green jobs out there, people think it's about building actual so-called green energy like solar and wind. It's not. That's not what it's about. There's not going to be a big surge in solar manufacturing plants here in the United States. We get them from China. China loves this. They love it. They sell us the green energy that they, the politicians sell this dream or this myth that green energy can actually power this country and keep it prosperous. Meanwhile, China is building another coal-fired power plant, or a couple of them every week, to fuel the manufacturing boom that's happening in their country. And then they use that manufacturing boom to make solar panels that they sell back to us. I mean, what a deal! What a deal that is. And so it's actually unavoidable, because it is a fact that the enslaved people in concentration camps, Muslims, Uyghur Muslims in China, are being used as slave labor to create a lot of this green energy that is sold back to the United States, including solar panels. And so, it was good on somebody to bring it up into John Kerry's face, and he admits it, but he just doesn't seem. He says it could be a problem. Oh, I think it's more than a could be problem for those poor people that are actually enslaved in China, making these products that allow Americans to virtue signal about so-called green energy. But on top of that, and we talk about this a lot on this podcast. Isaac isn't here today, but he's talked about it a lot as well. The rare earth minerals and other things that you have to mine, get out of the ground to create all of these solar panels. A lot of that is either mined in China, again, with either slave or underpaid labor, or it's done by child labor in countries in Africa to bring up to make the batteries, for instance, that Tesla employs, and this whole idea of going to the federal fleet was going to go all electric. The minerals to make those batteries are largely mined by children in Africa, and this is fact. This is not actually that hard to learn. And these are the actual prices of going green, of green energy. So it's great that somebody mentioned it to John Kerry. I doubt the next time that he's on Meet the Press or any of the Sunday shows that he'll be asked about this again. It's one of those checkbox journalism things, I guess, and then it'll just move on. But people who actually do, if you actually do care about green energy, if you care about any of that stuff, you need to understand where it comes from. And frankly, you need to advocate that practice stops. The United States is actually in a position of power here through John Kerry to make it stop. He doesn't seem very interested. So, slave labor will be fueling the fantasy of a solar powered future for the United States.
Also joining us, we have Nate Myers, development coordinator here at the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir?
Good. Sorry about that. Was getting a haircut. Apologies.
Oh, nice. Well, you look good. Yeah,
well, thank you. Appreciate it.
It's worth the wait. Yeah, and just to, I want to get to the topics that we have outlined for this episode, Jim. But our James Taylor, president of the Heartland Institute, was on one of these. Was on a roundtable discussion about energy policy, and he talked about how the solar panels were just basically made in China, and then these jobs here in the United States are just basically unpacking them and installing them and then moving on. So it was a good thing. Maybe I'll post it in the show notes. It was a really good discussion, but we got a number of crises we have to deal with, so we probably shouldn't postpone too much. We got to talk about some of these things. The first one being the employment crisis. So I've got a couple of articles here. One is from the Wall Street Journal titled "Millions Are Unemployed. Why Can't Companies Find Workers?" So it says, in the red-hot economy coming out of the pandemic and lockdowns, with unemployment still far higher than it was pre-COVID, the country is in a striking predicament. Businesses can't find enough people to hire. So it says rising vaccination rates, easing lockdowns, and numerous amounts of federal stimulus aid are boosting consumer spending on goods and services, yet employers in sectors like manufacturing, restaurants, and construction are struggling to find workers. So there's a bunch of reasons why proposed in this article, but I think the one that is on top of mind, especially for right-leaning think tanks like us that deal with policy all of the time, is the COVID stimulus policies that were put into place, namely the generous amounts of unemployment insurance. Nate, do you think that this is a big factor in this, small factor, or no factor at all?
What, all of the stimulus and unemployment people are collecting right now?
Yeah, and that's preventing people from going back to work?
Oh, it's probably the only reason that's holding people back from going to work. I mean, there are plenty of people out there that work, blue collar, minimum wage jobs, 2 or 3 of them, to make ends meet. And they're currently getting more money from the federal government to stay home than they would going back to work. I mean, it's a no-brainer from a lot of people's perspectives, and I don't blame them. But you have to cut off the flow of money at some point and just tell people, get back to work.
Jim, is this so to kind of go on with the kind of the articles we have here? There's a lot of people that are suggesting that this is a big problem, that the generous unemployment benefits, people are getting like double what they would have gotten before COVID, that this is causing people to not pick up jobs that they would normally take. Other people, other economists are suggesting that this is being overblown. You've got people like what is it? The Secretary of Labor, I think it was, saying that like, no, this is only a small aspect. It's being overblown. Do you think that we're just kind of trying to reaching at straws here? What do you think?
Well, I find it actually pretty discouraging and almost hilarious that the Biden administration is pretending that that their enormous stimulus programs, that printing money, fake money, not even printing it, they're just putting digital money, I guess, into the into people's bank accounts. I mean, nobody actually printed those $1,200 in $100 bills, put it in an envelope and put it in an actual bank. This is digital money. They just give it to you. And so they have these policies that they've wanted to implement for a long time. And they think that it has no effect, but can only have good effects on the economy, right? That extending unemployment benefits basically forever, with really no cap on it, is not going to have any effect on the workforce. They think that increasing the unemployment benefits, because it wasn't generous enough, supposedly, has no effect on the labor market. Of course, we're seeing that it does. Story after story of restaurant owners, shop owners, they can't attract enough. They can't get people in to work their stores. And so there's this, it's the idea that government policy doesn't really have any effect in the real world. It has an enormous effect on the real world. We see that, frankly, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, that kind of the difference in the policies of the Trump administration versus the Biden administration. We are at a place now where it seems that the Biden administration is enjoying and wants to perpetuate crisis for as long as possible. As Rahm Emanuel, Barack Obama's first chief of staff, once said, "You never let a good crisis go to waste." They are going to milk this COVID crisis for as long as possible to continue basically policies in place that they would not be able to do otherwise, which is exactly what Rahm Emanuel was talking about. And so this Wall Street Journal story, it's clear that they're trying to exploit this crisis for as long as possible, because it said in the Wall Street Journal story that people are afraid to go back to work because they think they're going to get or spread COVID. Now, look, we just spent how many billions of dollars to make sure everybody in America could get a free vaccine? And if you get the vaccines, you're protected. You should not have to worry about it ever again. But what does our government do? What does Biden encourage Anthony Fauci to do? Go out there and continue telling people that even if you have the vaccine, it doesn't matter. You still have to continue to social distance. You shouldn't gather in crowds. You have to keep wearing your mask. And so these contradictory messaging is, I think this is on purpose. This is, people are wondering, why is Fauci so bad at public messaging? He's not bad at public messaging. He is giving the message that the Biden administration wants out there, and that is to continue to be afraid. If you have a vaccine, you should not be afraid of either getting COVID or spreading COVID. So that's false, but that is hurting the job market, because people are afraid of going out there. And the Biden administration also won't press to have the schools open. So the Wall Street Journal story talked about how a lot of people, they're still under lockdown and their schools won't open. The Biden administration has had every opportunity to encourage the schools to reopen, especially because of the fact that children are very poor at getting sick from COVID, let alone spreading COVID. But the science doesn't matter. What matters? The teachers' unions and their power of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. So Joe Biden will not urge the schools to reopen. And so a lot of parents are having a hard time getting, going back out there to the workforce, leaving home and actually going to a job, because their kids would usually be in school. And now they got to afford daycare. So you know what's coming? Well, they're going to continue to exploit this so that they can start getting universal child care. You've already heard them say it. Democrats on Capitol Hill and the administration are talking about, we need to give people free child care. It's like that's something that is not necessary, but it's something that Democrats always wanted. So they're going to continue this crisis as we go along. And then just, I just think we just have to grow up, frankly, and stop whining, and just get back to work. And enough of this. Do you know who the real suckers here are in our society right now on how these things have been set up? And these people are probably watching people who are just sitting at home, getting their unemployment checks. They got their stimmies, and so they have all the money that they apparently want right now. And it's actually, they get paid better to sit at home instead of going to work. The suckers are the grocery store workers. They've been at work every freaking day. Clerks at 7-Eleven, you got nurses and doctors, long haul truck drivers, Amazon delivery guys, food delivery folks, restaurant owners. All these people have been open this entire time. They've had staff in their places of businesses this entire time. But we as a society have basically financially incentivized sitting on your ass and not getting back to work and contributing to society. And if you think the Biden administration actually wants people working instead of basically test driving a universal basic income, you're not paying attention.
That was going to be my next question for you, Jim. Do you think they will try to perpetuate this crisis long enough, or even try to, kind of morph it into a different crisis to, cause enough panic and fear to justify some kind of universal basic income?
Yes, and I see that Donald is nodding his head as well, because that is the case. Look, we've already taken it for a nice big test drive, haven't we? We've been doing this for a year. So yeah, this is already happening. So this is going to be pushed. And frankly, what we see is how bad it is for the country to have a universal basic income. Well, and because we are not a productive society when you pay people to sit at home.
Well, and they've already gotten to test out how compliant people will be with big dramatic paradigm shifts to the, American culture, our way of life. Look how many people just kind of bent the knee and said, yes, whatever you say, throughout the pandemic. Mm-hmm. They got a really good read on how to approach big paradigm shifts in America.
Jim, I could see you're heated. If you want to get more heated, if you don't want to get more heated, don't look at Twitter, because on trending is "we are closed," and it's a bunch of people talking about like, I'm crying crocodile tears that nobody wants to go back to work. Well, maybe you should pay people more. That's the message on Twitter. That is what is trending on Twitter, and it's just like it's so silly, as if this is actually a manifestation of some like free market or something like that, and people not compensating their potential employees more, and not the result of just ridiculous government policy. I was reading through one of these articles, and it was saying how like state benefits was averaged out to be like $315 or something, and on top of that is this federal increased unemployment insurance, which is another $300. So we're talking about like $600 plus a week. And of course people are going to go back to work. Like, I don't need to be an economist. Like, it's just it's common sense. Like, people aren't going to go back to work. Like, oh God, look at Andy pulled it up. Yeah, it's nightmare territory. I don't know what the end game is for all of this, but it doesn't seem like it's going to go back to normal very quickly. Jobless numbers came out for April, and they were looking for 1 million new jobs. It turned out to be about a quarter of that. Right. So I don't know what's going to happen going forward. They try to write it off as being like, oh, this is just transitory or whatever word that they use. That this is just a little monthly anomaly. Everything will get back to normal in next month or something. I'm not holding my breath. Are you, Nathan?
I'm just wondering where they gathered that expectation from. Like, where did you think this 1 million jobs was coming from? What have you done to stimulate any kind of growth in our economy? I mean, we haven't reopened everything. We haven't loosened any of the restrictions. Capacities are still down. Unemployment is still, sky high. Where did you think these jobs were coming from? I just don't understand why the expectation was so high.
Yeah, I've got a Reason article that talks about how, like, actually, this is the employment, story here is a little bit more complicated. And it talks about how, like, the federal government is definitely manipulating everything and trying to, spur all of this fake growth and all of that. But simultaneously, states are kind of rolling back all of these restrictions. You're seeing like these competing forces. So Reason was being a little bit more optimistic in the article that I read, and saying that this is kind of, it seems like it's the economy trying to stumble through this complex web of stuff, getting out from underneath this COVID command economy. So that's kind of what I'm crossing my fingers for. I'm not so sure. Jim, I mean, Heartland Institute, where our main focus is on the states. So do you see that there's a lot of room for state policymakers to kind of pick up the slack that's being left by the federal government?
I mean, the policy could be to open up your damn state. Florida and Texas. I actually would be really interesting, and we didn't take the time because it didn't occur to me to look up the unemployment statistics for, say, Texas compared to, say, here in Illinois, where we're very much still locked down, or California for that matter. Florida is fully open. Countries like Sweden, they never locked down and never had a mask mandate. I wonder how their economy is doing right now. I wonder if they have a lot of people, sitting at home getting stimmies and unemployment benefits. And not contributing to their societies. Look, COVID-19 is knocked this country on its butt. All right. What's keeping us on our butt is not COVID-19. It is policies in place that are locking our society down and encouraging people to not work. We're not going to get back to normal if we're going to have basically a universal basic income. And this idea, again, putting those tweets up, that, this is just, if you paid more, then people would come back to work. It's like, well, yeah, if they paid more than unemployment benefits. If your choice is either to get back to work finally because you're healthy and the job market needs you, or to just sit home and get an unemployment benefit, that's what people will do. That's called incentivizing. But we're not incentivizing work right now. And it's not about wages. Look, when you work for somebody, you are exchanging your talent and your time for the benefit of the company. But guess what? The company also benefits from you. It's a mutual voluntary relationship. That's what participating in the labor force is. And the idea that, I guess they should just pay you $25 an hour so you'll come back to work at that restaurant or come back to work at Target or something like that. It's like, okay, great. How about having all of the prices of everything Target sells it also increase commensurately to compensate for paying you more than you're actually worth. And that's what's, the laws of economics do not change because people are snarky on Twitter. They do change when you change the inputs and outputs of what's going on here. And when you input incentives to not work, you will find, that people won't work.
Yeah, again, reading from this Wall Street Journal article, it mentions the numbers that I put out there, the $318 a week plus the $300 on top of that. It says that the average unemployment recipient earns better than the equivalent of working a full time at $15 an hour. So even if you upgraded that, okay, we hear your messages on Twitter, we're going to do $20 an hour. Like, are people really going to say, all right, for that extra $150 a week, I'll trade in my 40 hours a week of labor? Like, of course not.
No,
of course not. So it's a much bigger problem than just pay your employees more. This is the result of bad government policy. And yeah, we'll see if it goes away. Nate, you already brought up the idea of a universal basic income. I think that's inevitable. Especially under a Biden administration and left-run Congress and all of the like. Anyone want to comment further on this unemployment topic, or should we go on to the next crisis? We'll just rattle off crises, all episode.
Yeah, all these crises. Are we going to go into the gas crisis, the gas prices crisis right now? Because you guys are obviously way too young to remember the Jimmy Carter administration.
70s.
Now, in all honesty, I am also pretty much too young to remember the Jimmy Carter administration. I was 9 when he was finally thrown out of office and the Reagan Revolution began. But I do remember my family struggling during the 1970s. I do remember gas lines, sitting in the car in a gas line during the 1970s. I remember the term that was invented called stagflation. They had to invent new economic buzz terms to fully describe the economic misery that we were experiencing under the Carter administration. And that was pretty much all fixed by free market, smaller government policies, although not always as successful as shrinking government, but definitely pro-market policies by the Reagan administration snapped us out of that. And now we're back to it again, but it's happening so fast. We are just month 5? We're at we're almost 5 full months into the Biden administration, and he's already in mid Jimmy Carter form. So congratulations, everybody. And this is actually the new normal.
Yeah, the gas crisis. So this was a story that was brought to my attention just the other day, and it was actually my wife that brought it up to me. And she's like, "Have you heard of this gas crisis thing?" I said, "No, I haven't actually. I'm kind of surprised that I haven't heard of that." So I start Googling it, and I found out that it's like Nate, you were actually telling me more about this, that it was about like a Russian hackers. Can you fill me in real quick?
Yeah, so apparently the group responsible for the hack is a Russian hacker, like kind of like hackers for hire, almost like mercenaries, based out of Russia, called DarkSide, and they're still expecting a ransom in order for the pipeline to be turned back on. Though I do think they have found a workaround. The company, I believe the company is Colonial. I think that's the name of it. Colonial or Continental, something like that.
Yeah.
But I think they figured out how to get the pipeline back online without paying the ransom. But the fact that the Biden administration said it would be up to the business to pay the ransom in order to get it back, it's like, wow, real way to really take charge on national security. We're so worried about national security that we closed down our boundaries to different countries for the pandemic. But when a foreign hacker group literally takes down all of the East Coast gas supply, that's not a governmental issue. Okay.
Yeah. So she brings that up. I Google it. I find what you were just talking about, and I was like, okay, well, no, I mean, this seems to be like a regional thing. This doesn't seem to have any like macro implications across the the country. She says, well, is this like their excuse for why gas prices are rising? Like, are they going to use this as like the reason why gas prices are rising? And I said, in short term, no. Long term, probably. Yeah, probably. And like, you've already seen articles that are like $3 national gas average across the country reached $3. Mostly in part to this story about these Russian hackers. It's always the Russians, by the way. It's always the Russians. And it's just like, like, I don't know. I think that what we're going to see, especially as the policies of the Biden administration really kind of take effect over the next couple of years, that we are going to see a general uptrend in gas prices. And maybe this is just a taste of things to come.
I was going to say, this is just a taste of like what would happen if they were actually able to pass any semblance of the Green New Deal. Like, you think the recent power outages in Texas and the gas prices, not caused by anything the government necessarily did, but that would be child's play compared to the crises that we would have on our hands if any kind of Green New Deal bill would be passed by the federal government.
These Russian hackers, DarkSide. By the way, DarkSide, wasn't that a DC villain? I think he was. Yep. He was in the Snyder cut of the Justice League movie. God, I don't know why I know that. Anyway, so gas prices were artificially inflated for criminal reasons by DarkSide, right? The Green New Deal would artificially inflate energy prices for ideological reasons, but the result would be the same: higher prices for everybody. And look, I found it hilarious. There's this one, I don't think we have the audio clip here, but Jennifer Granholm, who is the Secretary of Energy, don't know really what her qualifications for that would have been, but nonetheless, she's the Secretary of Energy. And she was asked about the pipelines, and she said that, pipelines are the most efficient way. They're the best way to move gas, because that's right. The reporters were asking, well, what about just putting gasoline on trains or in trucks and just, making up for the loss of flow of oil in the pipelines? And she says, well, pipelines are the most efficient way and the best way to move petroleum. It's like, you don't say. Wow. Then why was the first thing you did as the Biden administration on day one was to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline? Why are you not approving pipelines all over this country? And it's because for ideological reasons. So Jennifer Granholm, on one hand, said that pipelines are what we need. More pipelines are what we need. In fact, that's obviously very clear, especially on the East Coast. New pipelines haven't been built there in a long time for ideological reasons. Like New York State will not allow a natural gas pipeline on their soil because of green posturing, virtue signaling. And that's going to eventually have real world results. These things always come back to bite you. The fact that one pipeline being hacked by DarkSide, over in Russia, can cause this much havoc should be a wake-up call that we need a redundancy system in place. We need 20 of these pipelines. You need to have this in place for our own economic and energy security. It wasn't that long ago, and it was during the previous administration, where something that was considered impossible actually occurred. The United States was for the first time, probably in at least 2 generations, energy independent. We are not that anymore. Look how quickly things can turn around. We are so if an administration does not like pipelines, but admits that they are actually what we need, does not want to have any more fracking or oil exploration, even though that is what we need, these policies actually have bad effects in real life to real people, and it happens pretty damn quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. It's scary pictures coming out of the East Coast, though. Lines around the block looking for gas. Kind of creeping me out, honestly. Kind of creeping me out.
People getting in fights. I've seen several videos of people getting into fist fights over it.
People pouring gasoline into plastic bags. That's also a great way to transport fuel.
But again, all of this is completely unnecessary. It's only this way because the hard left environmental ideologues are in control of public policy in this country. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that we can't drill for more oil, transport more oil in pipelines, refine more oil. This would all be good. We could be completely and thoroughly energy independent. We have all the natural gas and oil that we would need for the next 250 years minimum underneath our own feet. And we're not getting it because of ideological nut jobs, environmentalists that run this government.
It looks like, Nate, I think you already mentioned this, but it looks like they have found a workaround. They're not going to pay any ransom or anything like that. They're going to get this back going. However, experts suggest that it might still take weeks for the gasoline supply to kind of even out across the East Coast, and for people to stop panicking and hoarding and all of the like that's kind of throwing the supply out of whack. So we might be seeing gas lines in this for a little bit longer. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Nate. Were you going to say something? And I interrupt again because I like to go on rants.
No, go right ahead.
Rant away, Jim.
When this first happened, people are like, "Oh my God, gas prices are skyrocketing." It's like, yeah, that's right, and that's actually the market at work, working properly. One of our, he used to be the science director here at the Heartland Institute. He's moved on to another organization, Jay Lair. One time he asked me, he's like, when do you think we will run out of natural gas, for instance? When do you think we'll run out of oil and natural gas here in the United States? And I said, I don't know, 300 years? He says, no, never. We will never run out of oil and natural gas. Why? Because at some point it would become too expensive economically to get what's left in the ground out, right? And so we would actually never fully and run out. So high prices that were happening on the East Coast and maybe happening everywhere is the market reaction to scarcity, and it's to ensure that we don't run out of gas. And I guess these gas stations that ran out of gas didn't raise the price fast enough or high enough. But the fact of the matter is, it actually shows if people are waiting in lines for 2 hours to get to fill up their tank, that shows how important the petroleum industry and the gasoline stations are in your neighborhood are to your everyday life. They didn't want to be left. They would sit in line for 2 hours to make sure that if they needed to get somewhere, that they had enough fuel to get there. And so, this is frankly, higher prices is the market at work. And the answer to that, how we had lower prices during the Trump administration, was because we were actually getting serious about participating in the global market for petroleum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just afraid that we're going to see more stories like this, and they'll be probably attributed to different hacker groups, probably Russia. But yeah, I don't know. This kind of freaks me out a little bit. Not quite as much as this other story, another potential crisis, I don't know, which is inflation. So this is a CNBC article. Inflation speeds up in April as consumer prices leap 4.2%, fastest since 2008. Inflation in April accelerated at the fastest pace in more than 12 years as the U.S. economy recovery kicked into gear and energy prices jumped higher, the Labor Department reported on Wednesday. The CPI, which measures a basket of goods as well as energy and housing costs, rose 4.2% from a year earlier. A Dow Jones survey had expected a 3.6% increase. The month-to-month gain was 0.8% against an expected 0.2%. So this includes energy prices overall jumping 25%, 50% increase for gasoline. Used car and truck prices, which are seen as a key inflation indicator, surged 21%. So, Nate, it's as if printing trillions of dollars in the past 12 months has an inflationary effect. Who would have guessed that?
I mean, who could have seen this coming? It's only been one of the main libertarian positions for, 50 years. But yeah, I mean, it's shocking when you print like half of the money supply in 2 years. It's no wonder that, inflation, or what percentage of dollar bills did they print in the last year? Or something like,
I think
it was lower than 50. It was like 20% or something.
No, I think it was literally 30% of all the currency in circulation was printed in the last 12 months.
That's insane. I mean, that's beyond wild. But yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise. And honestly, I think this is only the beginning. I think it's going to get a lot worse.
Jim, what do you think? Do you think printing money like there's no tomorrow has some ill effects? I mean, that seems crazy in this day and age.
Yeah, well, one of my mottos on this podcast and in life is that it can always get worse, and it will always get worse. Enjoy every moment, everybody, because this is as good as it's going to be. Pretty much, you can count on that it's all going to be worse from this moment forward, and then from this moment forward. And so, yeah, the idea that that the economic malaise that we're starting to feel the beginnings of right now, it might just fade away, and we can reverse this and go the other direction. I wouldn't count on that. Yeah, there actually is a real world ramification for printing all this money and pouring it into the economy, right? These stimulus checks that people got, free money. And so if you have more money and the same amount of goods, what do you think happens to the price of those goods? They go up. The prices of those things go up because there's more money chasing fewer goods, right? So this is to be expected. I think you have a story here, Donnie, that you're going to share on screen, perhaps, from our friends at the Blaze, where Bank of America is warning of what they call hyperinflation. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, things can. I don't mean to be a complete Debbie Downer and always looking at things like the Prince of Darkness here, but to expect the economic policies that we already know, the policy instincts of this administration and what they are. Do you guys have any faith at all that we're going to get back to a market economy where prices and the costs of things are more in line with what their actual value is, rather than artificially inflated through the injection of all of this cash into the economy and into people's pockets? This is what, frankly, Zimbabwe tried to do. And then Zimbabwe one day, when they print a $100 trillion note that people had in their pockets. I mean, oh my God. The laws of economics will not be mocked, everyone. They will not be mocked. And this is where we're at. We have an administration that thinks the laws of economics don't apply, that their good intentions and what they intend to happen and the good that they really feel they need to do for people is what matters. No, right. Well, economic law is what matters.
They think that their motive creates a vacuum, an economic vacuum. They're like, oh, well, if our intentions are good, well, it'll all work out. No, oftentimes the most well-intentioned government programs have the most disastrous effects. In printing money is no different. This is going to end horribly. Even
though I go to the wonderful Portillo's restaurant here in Illinois, my intention is still to lose 10 pounds this month. But, me going to Portillo's every week is certainly not helping that. But my intention is to lose 10 pounds. Right. I could keep saying that over and over. I'm never going to lose that 10 pounds until I stop going to Portillo's, right? And we're not going to stop inflation until we stop treating money as completely free gifts that have no impact at all on the body, or in this case, on the national economy.
This CNBC article says, because of the effects of the pandemic and the reopening of the economy, Federal Reserve policymakers and many economists are dismissing the current round of numbers as transitory, with the expectation that inflation settles down later this year around 2% range targeted by the central bank. So again, like the pattern with the other crises, everyone's no, it's fine. It's like that meme of the dog drinking like coffee and everything's on fire around it. Yeah, that's what they're trying to say. It's fine. So yeah, the Blaze article that you mentioned there talks about a Bank of America report that says, quote, that mentions of inflation quadrupled year over year. after last week mentions have jumped nearly 800% year over year. On an absolute basis, mentions skyrocketed to near record highs from 2011, pointing to, at the very least, transitory hyperinflation ahead. Now, that sounds extreme. That sounds scary. Bank of America, humongous bank, talking about how looks like we're going to have some hyperinflation, but before everyone just starts, spending all their money now while it still has value, I will say that like the definition of hyperinflation isn't necessarily Zimbabwe style or Weimar Republic or anything like that. I believe it's like inflation that's in excess of like 8% or something like that. So still terrible.
That's nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Still terrible. But don't start mapping out your spot for your $100 trillion Federal Reserve note anytime soon.
This is what's really it's actually really going to be, if you didn't care about your standard of living decreasing because of these policies, these inflationary results, and all of these things, it's a fascinating thing to look at objectively as just from an economic sense. I mean, can anyone explain to me why in the United States, which was humming along just great until about March of 2020, that the price of lumber has quadrupled or quintupled in just the last several months?
I've still been trying to make sense of that. I don't understand.
I don't get it. We are a country that can make our own lumber. That's one of the things we actually do in this country.
The majority of our country is just empty forest. Like, I don't understand how we can have just, a run on lumber. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't understand how that can just happen. I haven't seen a good explanation for why that is. I mean, I feel like a sucker, but I feel really regretful that I did not replace my deck, which needs replacing, in the back of my house last year, and instead waited until this year. I'm going to be spending, I don't know, 5 times as much as I would have, just last year. But it doesn't seem to make any sense to me. We research that and we leave it in the show notes if we find a good article that explains why the price of lumber in the United States has gone up so high, because it's not as if there was anything in the news that indicated that there was a problem in the supply chain or there was something going on with global wood prices. I mean, nobody, I never saw anything like that. All we saw was that lumber is like 5 times expensive as it was before. So it seems to me that is one of those unexpected consequences of mindless economic policy in this country, that we didn't see this kind of inflation happening in the Trump administration. Now, I know COVID changed a lot of things. It changed the workforce, obviously. It made us it just basically crushed productivity in the United States. But that was temporary. Frankly, there's a lot of people that, even as we talked at the top of the podcast about people not wanting to go to work, there are a lot of people at work. We're at work. The people, you go to the grocery store, those people at work, a lot of people, everybody in Florida is at work. So, these things are kind of, they're a little bit mysterious, but certainly injecting all of this money into the economy and causing inflation is having a ripple effect on a bunch of other aspects of the economy that were not anticipated. And so this idea that, don't worry about it, we'll be back to only 2% inflation in a couple of months. Yeah, I don't believe that for a minute.
Update on the one story we were talking about, the gas crisis. I said that, no, they're not paying the ransom. It looks like they are, apparently. So this is a Bloomberg article. Colonial Pipeline paid hackers nearly $5 million in ransom. It said that this conflicts with earlier reports that they had no intention on paying this extortion fee. The company paid the hefty ransom in difficult-to-trace cryptocurrency within hours of the attack.
No way. They paid in crypto?
Yeah.
Not going to lie, that's kind of cool.
They demanded to be paid in crypto. They demanded to be paid in crypto. Which makes sense. If you're a criminal, what do you want to be paid in? You want to be paid in March bills? You want somebody to cut you a check, bring a bag of gold? Of course it's going to be paid in crypto.
Right. Do you want the inflated US dollar or do you want the crypto?
Yeah, right. Start sending me baskets of silver.
Yeah. I prefer to be only paid in Doge.
Yeah. So just the kind of the last thing on the inflation story. So I've argued for the last year now that we've been operating under a modern monetary theory playbook for arguably over a decade now, probably since 2008, if we're being honest, but at the very least in the last year under the COVID command economy. And of course, modern monetary theory is the idea that debt and deficits don't matter. This is not something that I propose. This is a lefty Stephanie Kelton playbook idea. So what would the modern monetary theory people's response be to this inflation? Now, I think if you were to actually like get a statement from them, and they've actually been kind of quiet on Twitter recently. I was trying to find a comment for them about this inflation. I think that they would say, "Oh no, this is just a little blip. This is not indicative of a longer trend. We're going to go back down to 2% here pretty soon." But if this does carry out, you know what their solution would be, right?
You tell me. You're the MMT guy.
They would raise taxes. They need to sop up some of that excess dollars out of the economy by raising taxes. That's what they would do. So when you hear about the Biden administration talking about raising taxes on the rich or the corporations or whatever, to me, that's like a sign that they were expecting inflation, and that is their solution to dealing with it.
And when they say raise taxes on the rich, what they really mean is raise taxes on the middle class.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
that's really the only taxpayers in the country. Most wealthy individuals are able to, finagle their way out of paying, normal tax rates. And the poor don't really contribute that much. So inevitably, it's always the middle class that takes the brunt of it.
Well, we're operating. First of all, I think it's awesome that we have people watching the live stream and we're sharing their comments on here. And they actually gave me a pretty good explanation for the lumber price increase. A couple theories, at least, that if you're watching on YouTube, I'll be checking those out and you could get a few answers from people. So that's great. Keep it up, guys. We're really enjoying that. But the modern monetary theory. So Donnie, you're more expert than me, but the idea is that the government, let's put it in these terms because I guess it makes the most sense, prints money, right?
Yeah.
So the government prints money and just sends it out there into the world. So who gets that money? Now, in this, with the stimulus checks and the unemployment benefits and all these things that are just being paid out by the government without raising any taxes on anybody, they're just throwing the money out there, they're shoveling out the door. Yeah. So who is getting this under fully implemented, because we're doing a little junior version of it right now, but under fully implemented modern monetary theory, you say that we have to raise taxes to get that money back, I guess, so back to the government. Who is that money going to in the first place in modern monetary theory? In other words, if it's going to the middle class, or it's going out to, say, construction workers for infrastructure projects, or it's going to, healthcare workers for, more government funded healthcare, how do you tax, quote unquote, the rich and get that money back out of the economy and back into Uncle Sam's pocket? I don't understand how that would work, because first of all, the rich are very good at eluding taxes. So they might actually grab some of this free money in modern monetary theory, invest, make their money, hide it somewhere overseas, and then you're not getting that back. That money exists somewhere else. So this, the more you think about it, the more I think it's like, why can't we just go back to capitalism? Why? Because it's very simple, because you guys don't have all the answers. You cannot plan and command and control a country, let alone a global economy. But these people think they can, and they're going to be the ruin of us all.
Yeah, so the answer to your question is the genius behind modern monetary theory, and I use the word genius in like the evil, like Lex Luthor genius type of a way, because the money goes to whoever they want it to go to. When you are controlling the new printed money and you start talking about $2 trillion infrastructure bills and green energy, it's just like that's where all this money goes. Jim, you talked about like the stimulus checks and the unemployment or whatever, but in previous episodes, when we talked about that as a slice of the pie from the $2 trillion stimulus relief thing, what was it, like 10%? Only like 10% of that money is actually going to like the individuals on the ground. Where the rest of that, $1.8 trillion is going. It's going to the companies that the government wants. It's a command economy. So if they're going to put it into the green sector, the money is going to be pouring into the green sector. I think that the first real test run of this modern monetary theory thing was in the wake of the 2008 crisis, where all of this money was being pumped into the housing market and the banking systems to reinflate that bubble. So it's wherever the government directs that money, that's who's getting it. That's the genius of modern monetary theory. That is how it turns our economy into a command economy, a controlled economy from the government.
And this is where I actually give some credence to people who are more on the left. in the past year, we saw one of the largest transfers of wealth from the lower and middle class to the upper class, because you had all of these large corporations getting federal bailouts from the stimulus bills. Meanwhile, you had small businesses and local shops that were not getting any of the stimulus money. Sure, they were getting, $2,500 as an individual, but they weren't getting the same kind of support from the government that all of these major corporations were. So you had small businesses shutting down and large corporations basically coasting. And even some corporations like United Airlines, they received money so that they could pay their employees and keep the current number of employees they had. Instead, they fired the excess employees and just pocketed the cash.
Yeah, I see one comment that's taking a shot at Nathan over here saying, hey, did you cut any checks for $100,000 lately? Some high-income people do pay tons in taxes. There is no doubt about that. No one's denying that. However, it is also very clear that there are certain corporations, call them Amazon, that benefited way disproportionately from all of this government action over the last 14 months. So to suggest that there aren't power players that are really kind of pulling the strings, is a little naive in my opinion. But
yeah, and we could take a shot at Amazon because our unlike Parler back several months ago, the Heartland Institute's web presence is not dependent on Amazon Web Services. So take that, Jeff Bezos. You're not getting our business. It's we're in a server in an undisclosed location somewhere in Eastern Europe. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and we just got a $5 million payoff in cryptocurrency because of our. Oh wait, I said too much.
Whoa.
All right, so we got a few more minutes here. I want to talk about one more topic. This is kind of a tease for next episode. So the Heartland Institute with Rasmussen Polling has conducted a study over the last week or so about a number of topics in relation to people's choice of cable news and media consumption that they have done. So next week, we're going to be talking in full about all the results. We've done questions about climate change, health insurance, firearms stuff, a couple of other different topics. And basically our aim was to see, based on what media you consume, how does that affect your perception of reality, right? So that's the overarching kind of concept of our polls. So we just released the first round of this that focused on climate change questions. And the results were kind of staggering, Jim. We won't go super into depth in this episode. This is kind of just a tease for next episode when we'll get really into it. But so just kind of some of the key takeaways from this just one portion of the poll says there's a strong correlation between a likely voter's favorite television news outlet and his or her understanding of basic facts about climate change. Compared to viewers of Fox News, another cable news outlet, and those who don't watch television news, viewers of CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and NBC are substantially more likely to believe that CO2 emissions continue to increase at recent rates. Humans will become completely or nearly extinct due to climate change within the next 100 years. For example, 58% of MSNBC viewers and more than half of viewers of ABC, CBS, and NBC said they think humanity could become extinct or nearly extinct within 100 years. 60% think that we're going to be extinct within 100 years. About 1/4, 25%, 1 in 4 of CNN or MSNBC viewers believe humanity could become extinct within 50 years because of climate change. Now, once you get into all the results, and we'll go into this more in depth next week, but for the Fox News viewers or the people that watch another quote unquote another cable news or don't watch it at all, the results are completely opposite. There's a far less amount of people that think that we are such in a dire situation. But I mean, this just kind of shows you the polarized world that we live in, Jim, where you've got 60% of viewers of these cable news stations thinking that we're going to go extinct. How can you have a rational conversation with people that think that we're going to die in this next generation?
I'd really like to do those same people analyze how many of those people have just like a general knowledge of history, just like, even a basic understanding of human events in the last, I don't know, 100,000 years? Like, do they really think what we're experiencing right now is even close to some of the catastrophes that the human race has experienced? I mean, they've proven that like something like 50,000 years ago, a super volcano erupted, and there was only around, I think, like 10,000 humans left on Earth. We bounced back from that. So what's 1 degree change in the weather? My God.
Yeah. Well, I was on a radio show this morning talking about this poll, and and the idea that like you said, half of viewers of CNN and MSNBC think the human race will either go extinct or be nearly extinct within 100 years. So basically by 2120, which means that they don't think that their grandchildren will live.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're talking about here. That
Right.
if they have kids, that their grandchildren, that their own children may be the last generation of humans on Earth. I mean, humans survived the Ice Age with Stone Age technology.
2 ice ages.
2 ice ages. Thank you, Nathan. Do you not think that the human race, with all the advantages we have with technology and all of that, can't survive warming by 2 or 3 degrees Fahrenheit over the next 100 years? You have to be insane to actually believe that. Or another sign of insanity is actually counting on CNN and MSNBC to be the person that gives you all your news and information. And I found one of the things about this poll that I found fascinating was that those who don't watch television news at all were more likely to get these questions correct than those who watch cable TV, but especially the liberal cable TV. And it was a leading indicator of your intelligence. Let's just say it that way. We ask questions that if you get, there was a right answer and a wrong answer, right? And it was a leading indicator of you getting the wrong answer if you were a Biden supporter, a CNN viewer, an MSNBC viewer, that you identified as a Democrat or as liberal. If you identified as conservative or as a Republican and did not have a high approval rating of Joe Biden and watched either Fox News or listened to talk radio or other cable news outlets like The Blaze or One America News Network or Newsmax TV or The First, things like that, it was a leading indicator that you were going to get these questions correct. In other words, when Donald Trump said, "You guys are fake news, CNN, you're fake news," he was 100% right, because they are fake, because people are believing things that are not true. That's the definition of fake.
Yeah, and the correct answer is that there is no scientific evidence pointing to a imminent extinction. The whole 97% of scientists consensus thing about climate change, that has nothing to do with us going extinct in 100 years. Even if you do buy that, the 97 thing, and we can obviously go into that. We have gone into that a million times. None of them are saying that we're going to go extinct in 100 years or 50 years. Like, that is just a complete fabrication. So the fact that 60% of these people think that this is going to happen is just that is an indicator that there is something very wrong with the media sources that you're consuming.
It just goes to show you how much of a misinformation age we live in. The fact that there's the truth, then there's worst case scenario, then there's what these people believe is actually going to happen. It's such a varying degree of such a separation from reality, even from what the scientists are saying is worst case scenario. Then on top of that, you have people who think the world's going to end in 50 years.
Yeah. Ronald Reagan had a famous quote. I think I have it almost precisely correct. Ronald Reagan, who was over here, over my shoulder on the video, he said, "It's not that liberals are ignorant. It's just that they believe so much that isn't so." And this is exactly describes these liberals who watch CNN and MSNBC. And it's actually kind of depressing that we have public policy in this country based on these completely ignorant and worse than ignorant, believing falsehoods. And we have public policy based on these things. And, Greta Thunberg, for instance, definitely believes that humans are in danger of extinction. And she has a global platform to continue spouting that nonsense.
Right.
It's her right. It's her right to spout nonsense, but it's just very discouraging to see how many people actually buy into it.
Yes, but our culture and our media suppress. Yes, I should always bring her up so we can get that audio drop. The big problem here is that our media and our cultural platforms suppress the truth, particularly about the climate, and promote lies about the climate. This morning, I posted on Twitter only the results of this one part of the poll about the public's views about climate change and how people are, frankly, misinformed about the truth about our climate, like how much it's warmed. And again, the idea that we're close to an extinction event. Immediately after I posted it, just with the link, and you can get this at heartland.org, it was immediately flagged as sensitive content. And so you had to do another click just to see the link to get to the poll. This is
so incredibly dishonest.
Yeah, it's completely dishonest. We're trying to actually express the truth, and we're actually just trying to share poll results, and it's flagged by Twitter as being misinformation.
Yeah, right. Can't be more objective than poll results. Like it's
right.
Poll results. Like
right.
It's just, this is what they said.
We're literally just saying these are people's opinions. That's all we're saying. We're not even trying to make an argument here. But I just want to know what we get in 100 years when we turn out to be right and the Earth is still here and people's heads haven't imploded and we're all still alive. Like, what do we win? Do we get a cookie or like a prize or a sticker or something? Like, what do we get?
They'll just say that we were off by 100 years and it's another 100 years to all these things. All right, so we are out of time, but I just want to say that we are going to go in depth into all of these poll results next week. So we did questions like this one on the global extinction. We did one on temperature increase. We did one on the amount of uninsured people with healthcare. We did a couple of questions about firearms and unarmed shootings. And some of these results will floor you. So you definitely want to, set a reminder to tune in next week to In the Tank podcast, where we're going to talk about all of these results in depth. Gentlemen, any last words of wisdom before we sign off for the week?
Nothing other than to thank the people that were here live and participating in the podcast with us. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Join us every Friday or Thursday, I guess, for a new episode of the In the Tank podcast. If you like our show, please subscribe, write a review for us on iTunes, or set a reminder on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. It looks like our audience is kind of growing a little bit, which will be very cool to interact with you guys with your comments and all of that. If you'd like, you can send us your comments, suggestions, questions to the show by emailing us at inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. Jim, where can the fine people find you?
You can find me at socialist and suppressive Twitter at @JLakely. You can also follow the Heartland Institute at Heartland Inst, and always visit heartland.org.
Nate Myers, you are a ghost on social media, so just say bye to the people.
Goodbye. So
Thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.